I'm Mandy Wiener, and I'm hosting this webinar today. So thank you so much for joining us and for getting involved. And we're going to have a really entertaining and enlightening hour, unpacking the many facets of parenting in lockdown and some Zoom therapy too. So for me, there's been the good, there's been the home baking, the game playing, also the bad, the ugly, homeschooling, a lack of personal space as well, the juggling as well. So we've got a really great panel today that's going to be discussing all of this. Owethu Leshabane, Womensomics founder and digital entrepreneur. Hey, Owethu.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so Owethu, like me, has also been a mom in lockdown and trying to deal with everything. How are you coping?
I'm not coping, but I'm surviving.
Neither am I. Neither am I. We'll talk about that. Don't worry. Okay, then we've got some therapy happening as well, some Zoom therapy. Ruth Answer is a clinical psychologist. Ruth, thanks for joining us for the next hour.
Thanks for having me, Mandy. Yeah.
Are you having to deal with this situation at all?
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You share our pain.
Yes.
And then the self-confessed, the granny, the Oma. So I'm not sure you have that same kind of experience. Prof. Ina Rothman is a PhD, extraordinary associate professor, Workwell Research Unit, MD of AfriFort. Prof, you're not in quite the same pain as the rest of us, hey?
No, I think I'm in a much better space. You know, I just feed ice cream and sweeties and all those comfort foods and then take them back to their parents.
all hacked and sugared up, huh? Okay, so over the next hour or so, we're going to be speaking about Olympic bake-a-thons, demonic temper tantrums, managing the Zoom sessions, what's keeping you sane, pre-TSD, that's something that Prof. Ina has been looking at quite a lot, the anxiety of going back to school, getting the virus, gender stereotyping, trying to keep your marriage alive at the same time, screen time, eating, all of that. So we're going to cover all of that in the next hour. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We really want you to get involved as well. So you can send us your questions. If you go to the chat function at the bottom, you can post your questions there and I will pose those to the panelists. So please get involved. If you've got some questions, if you want to share your experiences, post them in the chat and we'll try and get them back to you. There are also going to be some polls. We're going to be asking some polls. So try and get involved. It's pretty simple. They're self-explanatory. And in case you are worried, we can't see you. So if your kids are raging in the background, don't worry about it. You don't need to unmute yourself. We can't see you, so that's okay. So Owethu, I'm going to start with you. So my experience of trying to survive this is for the first 3 or 4 months, I was at home, working from home, and I was doing all of the homeschooling, and I was the teacher pretty much, and I was losing it completely. And then I went back to work, so I've just come back on radio for the past couple, 3-4 weeks or so. So now I'm not there, so I'm dealing with all the guilt of not being there. How have you been coping with trying to be a teacher, trying to be a parent, trying to be a businesswoman, trying to be a superhero?
Wanna swap, Mandy? Wanna swap?
Hey, then you have to deal with my guilt, eh? At the same time.
Well, it's been quite rough. I mean, it's the homeschooling and the ensuring that they're on top of things when it comes to homeschooling. And then, I mean, I've got a 2-year-old, I've got the 7-year-old, and then I've got an 8-year-old. So it's been real. It's been very, very real. And managing my workload and managing my deadlines. So I think it's literally just finding little pockets of moments where I can just throw in my coping mechanisms. That video that just played as the intro is like me, like the birds are out together. Like the trolleys at the supermarket are just there to give me corona. The kids are just like, they wake up every morning and their mission is really, how can we make the most amount of noise today that exceeds yesterday's Zoom session for mom? So it's literally just like finding moments where you just scream and then get back into sanity. I could deal with mom guilt right now, to be quite honest.
No, I have serious mom guilt that I've left them at home, and like they're on Zooms and stuff. In fact, my child's teacher just messaged me to say, "Is your child's teacher allowed to watch?" I'm like bearing all here, so you're gonna get all the details and the dirt. So like basically, I feel like I'm working and parenting and teaching and being a wife, and it's all merged into one place at one time, and there are no boundaries, there are no lines. Do you feel like that as well?
Absolutely. There are no boundaries. There are no lines. I'm negotiating. I'm bribing for moments to bath, or to have that nice salty Epsom salt bath. Bribing for them to just like I'm actually like bribing them to get out my bedroom, and saying, okay, guys, we'll have 2 movies for movie night on Friday. If you just let mommy work today and just finish my day of work. I've just got a lot more deadlines. Today I'm not going to be doing dinner with you guys. I'm going to be sitting at my laptop and eating my dinner. Then we'll do 2 movies on movie night. So I think there are no blurred lines. But I also think generally moms have we might be navigating this a little bit better than the dads are. I won't lie. My husband had like an anxiety attack the first few weeks, because he's always had his moments of like, okay, I'm going to go work at the coffee shop, or I'm going to go to the office and go finish this deadline, or I'm going to go to, he's got his colleagues that don't have children, male colleagues that don't have children. I'm going to go work at whoever's house tonight and finish this deadline. Or I'm going to go to the guest house and go work from the guest house. Now it's like the kids are here, like they're all over. And
I hear you.
So
Ruth,
Yes.
you're a clinical psychologist. What are you seeing out there in practice, and what do you tell people about parents that are trying to fill the role of the teacher? Can you be a parent? Can you be a teacher? I found that it definitely impacted my relationship with my kids. That's obviously happening to people.
I think that it's such a common concern that people have, because we've always been able to, just being the parent is hard enough, and suddenly you're trying to facilitate, if you're lucky enough, there's school online, and you're trying to facilitate the learning as well, and we're completely unprepared. And I think for those of us who didn't appreciate the important roles and the amount of patience that teachers must have, I think we're beginning to realize that. I've always been a great appreciator of teachers. I've got my mother was a teacher. I've got my brother-in-law is a teacher. So I've always seen and known that is something that I wouldn't be able to do. So I've had enormous respect and gratitude to teachers. But I think when you actually see how hard it is trying to facilitate your children's education, it is quite something. And I think that it is common. I see parents struggling in terms of, their relationships, most of their relationships with their children when it's coming to schooling are really fraught, because we as parents are also under stress. We're trying to battle jobs, and some of us are kind of we're losing jobs, or things are not the same, and then we're trying to battle facilitating your children's education, and it is very, very stressful. And children are also, the children that I'm dealing with are saying that they're finding their parents are just in their faces, like they want their privacy as well, and they're tired of their parents nagging them. And they used to have like space at school to chill with their friends. So I think that, obviously everyone's different and everyone's relationship's different. But for me, the majority of people I've seen and spoken to are really struggling with having so many roles.
So we actually have a poll on this that I'd like to stick up, which is, can you be a parent and a teacher at the same time? How is it impacting your relationship with your children? So that poll is going to pop up there, and you can vote. So the first one is, it's a nightmare, we scream and cry a lot, which is probably the one that I would pick, to be completely honest with you. if we're going to be candid and honest here. It's been an incredible bonding experience. We've both grown and learned a lot. So a lot of people have this amazing experience and they actually want to homeschool their kids, which I find, very admirable. We have good days and bad days. It's all about balance. So, I mean, don't tell anyone, but I'm picking the top one. So we're going to... Oh, hosts and panelists can't vote. So yeah, have a vote there and let me know what you think. But yeah, I think that I've definitely got great admiration for teachers. And where to, I mean, are you coping with that teaching?
There's been a lot of tantrums and they're not from the children.
Hey, Prof, you don't have to teach, so you're okay with it. So while we wait for the results of, oh, there we go, it's in. So how's it impacting your relationship with your children? So it's a nightmare, we scream and cry a lot, is 26%. It's been an incredible bonding experience. We've both grown and learned a lot, is 8%. And the majority, actually, this is reasonable. We have good days and bad days. It's all about balance. That's 66% of people. So not bad that, obviously there is good and bad. So Prof, you've been doing a lot of research and you've crunched the numbers for us. And, we've had great conversations on the radio about this as well. What have you found in your research about how parents are coping at home with trying to homeschool their kids, but also trying to work at the same time?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important to understand that we've conducted research on mostly working people. And it was a sample of approximately 1,650 people between June and May. And it was done on pre-traumatic stress. Now, pre-traumatic stress is an experience of we are almost anticipating trauma. If we compare it to post-traumatic stress, it's all about post-traumatic stress is that we have gone through trauma and now we've got flashbacks because of that. Where pre-traumatic stress is a type of an anxiety condition where people anticipate stress and trauma. So although pre-traumatic stress is not a psychiatric condition like PTSD, it is a predictor of future PTSD. So I think in the light of that, an interesting finding was that there was no difference between the pre-traumatic stress experiences of working parents and employees without children. But there was one big difference, because you can have the psychological effects of PTSD, and if it's chronically there, people also start developing physical effects such as sleep problems, gastric problems, mood swings, palpitations, those type of things. Working parents experience more physical symptoms of stress, and especially sleep problems, palpitations, stomach problems, muscle aches and pains, So working parents feel more stressed at a physical level than people who do not have children. And also parents were more concerned about the future than employees with no children. And that was very interesting.
This PTSD that we've spoken about is such a real thing, that anxiety, that fear of getting it, that fear of getting the virus, the fear of your children getting the virus, the anxiety of, should I send my kids back to school or not?
Yes.
Do you think companies are aware of the struggles that parents are going through with all of this?
For many, I've spoken to many business leaders the past few months, and some business leaders might perhaps think that because people have a job, because you are employed, you are lucky, and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is less severe on them. They make statements like, at least you have a job, so don't complain. However, I think it's extremely important to note that having a job and being employed during the COVID pandemic, our findings showed, does not mean that people are protected against the mental health impact of the pandemic, especially working mothers, Insecurity, constant worrying for them are more about than only job-related factors. Yeah. These mothers are deeply concerned about the economy, their children and families, and their ability to provide for their families because of the economy being where it is currently. It's very highly individual experiences. You know, the experience of a CEO or a senior manager are very different to the experiences of ordinary staff, a cleaner, a shop assistant. And unfortunately, most large organizations do not have a viable way to recognize the circumstances of each employee. And they run the risk of disconnecting with staff in these times.
So, Olwetu, this is something that you're very passionate about. You know, you've started Womensomics. Do you think women have a particularly hard time in ensuring that their voices are heard when it comes to juggling it all? I mean, I feel like I'm trying to just not drop the glass balls at the moment by juggling working and my kids at home and all of that. So how does Womensomics tackle that, and how are you tackling that?
Absolutely. So, I mean, like Dr. Ina just mentioned, those are very, very critical things that that we're dealing with as women. The disconnect is actually the most important of them all. And there's also the element of women are severely underpaid, 30% less than the men in this country, while still cooking, cleaning, caring for the children, and juggling our careers, which I call the 4 C's. We're really at a huge disadvantage, and we have been the worst affected by this pandemic than any other living group in this country. Mothers have been severely affected, and also women that are responsible to children, and women that are responsible for homes, and breadwinners, women that are breadwinners are severely affected by this pandemic. So the work of Womensomics is really we're going to corporates and we're asking them to make a concerted effort in closing off this gender pay gap. Number one. Number two, the funding and the procurement from women-owned businesses and women entrepreneurs is extremely important, especially during a pandemic such as this. And then during Women's Month, we don't want the chocolates and the flowers, because that 100 Rand goes a long way in being able to provide for our children. So rather, let's look at the efforts that companies and corporates are making in being able to close off this gender pay gap, and also in how women are being escalated into leadership positions and being upskilled into leadership positions during a time such as this.
So just a reminder, you can post some questions on the chat at the bottom. And here's one, Ruth, I think this would be a good one for you to answer, from Gail, saying, and I can totally relate to this, I'm really struggling with discipline at the moment, having been with my kids all day, every day for 4 months and juggling a full-time job. I go from 0 to a raging lunatic in seconds. I'm finding it impossible to draw boundaries and stick to consequences. And, you know, I've chatted to a few people about this who are moms, who say, like, you know, the rage is real, and also the way that you behave with your kids, you're then behaving that way on webinars or on Zoom meetings, and there really are no boundaries. How do you deal with that, Ruth?
No, it's so very difficult at the moment, because, you know, as I said, we don't have the space we normally have from one another, and even when we do have the space, we struggle with these things. So I think we're under so much pressure, you know, and we've never done this before. You know, it's not like we can look back and say, well, during the last pandemic, this is how parents managed to balance things. So we all just fumbling ahead. And I think that it's so ironic, because the people who actually need us at our best are our children. But they're the people who also get us at our worst, because they're our triggers and they're around us all the time. And you know, I know this is hard. This is easy to say and it's hard to do, but you have to find outlets and ways to cope and to contain your anxiety and your irritability, so that you can still respond in ways that are kind of consistent and predictable. Now, if you lose it, you're not a bad parent, you're just a normal parent. But I think that a lot of how our children respond is based on how we respond. So if we can contain our anxiety in terms of find other people to talk to, like this webinar, listen to people who are going through a similar experience. And if you really can't cope, then there are a lot of organizations at the moment that are offering support and counseling, and a lot more have opened up in terms of being able to give people the support they need. Because if we don't look after ourselves, we have nothing left in terms of looking after our children. And it's not us that are just losing it, it's our children as well. They're also going from 0 to 100. And so we do have to find ways to look at how we can look after ourselves so we can look after our children, but also know that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough. And sometimes it's really hard to feel that you like ever good, but you know, we all under stress, and just be kind to yourself and find outlets that are appropriate.
So I must say, the one thing that's really worked for me is I've got an amazing support group of moms, like a great village of moms on WhatsApp groups that I chat to, that I find that really helpful. I want to just stick up a poll here, and that's what has helped you through the dark days. So just give us an answer there and try to be honest if you can. So what has helped you through the dark days? Wine and Herbinol. And I want to speak to you about that as well, Ruth, the dependency that's definitely popped up. I know, absolutely. The village of parents who share my pain, and finding quiet time alone in the toilet, in my car, exercising away. I found exercising a really big help. Just sitting in your car by yourself. I know a lot of people do that. Yeah. So if you guys could just vote there, or which one are you? Do you want to be honest and tell us which one you voting for?
Definitely finding quiet time alone in the toilet, in my car, exercising away. Although with the exercising, I don't know if anybody follows me on Instagram, you would have seen that my little toddler, my 2-year-old, climbs on me as I'm doing my plank, and as I'm doing my squats, he's all over me, as I'm doing my yoga as well. But definitely the finding the quiet time. My hubby taking me out for the coffee dates at Engine Garage is like it's the highlight of our week.
Okay, let's see what people have to say. Can we choose all three? Definitely. So the first one is what has helped you through the dark days. Wine and Herbinol's 20%. The village of parents who share my pain is 12%, and finding quiet time alone in the toilet, in my car, exercising away is 68%. So Prof, from the research that you've done, you know, what have you found is the way that people are dealing with all of this?
Yeah, you know, the research that we actually did was to see what the trends were, you know, and I've been listening to Orleto and all of them regarding the difference between males and females in the work environment. So I did a very interesting analysis yesterday looking at working fathers and working mothers, and it was specifically evident that working mothers experience much more anxiety. You know, more than half of the 613 working mothers in the sample experience high levels of anxiety combined with physical symptoms. But listen to this one, compared to only a third or 35% of working fathers, you know, the father sample. There were 670 fathers. So more working mothers experience anxiety. And for me, a concern, and Mandy, this is really a concern, and I hope I speak to somebody, and perhaps Ruth and Orleto can come in here as well. The trend was more evident for younger single working mothers than married or engaged working mothers. These mothers are in the age group 20 to 39 who are single, divorced, widowed, or in an informal relationship. So in a nutshell, it seems really that our working mothers, and specifically younger single working mothers, are struggling more with anxieties and fears in these times.
Orleto, do you want to jump in there? I mean, you obviously see a lot of that out there with Womenomics and speaking to people.
Absolutely. You know, I've got the choice to simply switch off and say to my husband, deal with your children. Yeah. I think there's an element of anxiety that exists already when you're a single parent, because society says you're not perfect. How much more now when I need to juggle work, and I need to juggle my child's schoolwork, and dinner needs to be prepped, and I need to manage the screen time. I'm seeing a lot of comments about screen time as well. There's already the huge imposter syndrome that you have over the work that you do. I'm not paid well enough for what I'm doing. Additionally, I don't have assistance with my child. I don't have somebody else to hand them to. I can't drop them off at granny's house because there's a pandemic. So there's a huge anxiety of, am I doing enough? Am I being enough? Am I enough? And I think, a lot of women have vented their stresses and their frustrations and their anxiety of not feeling enough. And I think it's also just underlying traumas that we have as people, and underlying unresolved traumas that we have of growing up not feeling enough, not having enough, and not having the access to the things that we wanted. Now they've all been removed. And for me, I'm married, I've got my husband, I have domestic help, but there's already been those anxieties, because the times when I could drop off my children at bounce for an hour so they could bounce with their friends, I had an hour to myself to really have a nice warm coffee. I could go sit at a restaurant and do something for myself. Now, when all of that is removed, all my alone time is removed, and there's work, and then there's kids' work, and then there's caring for them, and then there's the cooking, and then there's the tidying up, because I'm a huge clean folk. I've got a lot, like, I love to clean and tidy up, keep spaces clean. You just, I don't have time for therapy like I used to. I don't have time to check in with myself like I used to. So I can understand where the frustrations are coming from for a lot of those single mothers.
So Ruth, one of the big issues on the chat here is around dealing with technology. There's a comment here: my anxiety was so extreme. Sorry, I skipped that one. Let me find. There's a few. Battling with limits around technology. What is a realistic amount of time to be allowed during the school week? Also, what limits are reasonable with tech on the weekends? How do we promote our children to be more physically active? That's one of them. There's just lots of comments around screen time and kids becoming gaming addicts, and that's coming up a lot. How do you deal with that?
I would not even begin to tell people my children's screen time, because I would be scared no one will take me seriously as a professional. So it is such a common problem, and I think that we've got to. I think that limitations and boundaries are important, but we also have to recognize, and I said, it's very hard to thrive in this time. I think surviving is kind of like really good. And we have to acknowledge that certain things are going to slip. I do think that we must encourage children to be outside. I think that a problem is if our children are on screens all the time. And also those that are doing online schooling, they're doing online schooling, a lot of it's on screens, if not all of it. And then they're on screens, in terms of their break times. I know that when I've had to say to my children, they have brain breaks in their schedule. And then I say, go away from your screen. They say, no, it's a brain break. I'm just watching YouTube. I say, no, your brain needs a break from the screen, not just from school. I think that we've got to be quite firm about saying that they need to be physically active, and they need to be outside. And even if they don't want to do a whole gym session, they need to kind of be on the trampoline or play hide and seek. And I do think, though, that our children are going to be much more on their screens than they are when life was pre-pandemic. And that is something that I think that we just need to know it's part of their coping, it's part of our coping. And also look at what type of screens. In terms of when they're just passively watching something or playing games, I think that could be a problem. But one of the things that I have been much more lenient is when I hear my teenager talking to her friends, because she's doing the kind of socializing that she hasn't been able to do for 4 months. And even though it's through the screen, I feel that social interaction and that giggling and that gossiping and whatever they're doing is really, really healthy. So I think we need to discriminate between what they're doing and what it serves them. So my sense is that everybody is battling with screen time. I haven't spoken to one parent who doesn't battle, and I haven't spoken to one child who wants more screen time. We need to have boundaries, but at the same time recognize that you don't have to be the perfect parent. And I think we'd all be quite horrified with how much more screen time our children are having now than pre-pandemic.
Yeah, look, I mean, I just told myself that my kids are learning a lot from their iPads. I try and put a lot of educational things on their iPads and limit the timing. But, I mean, as we say, you can't be perfect. Prof, I want to also speak a little bit about the difference between men and women, the gender imbalances. From your research, what have you picked up about how women are dealing compared to men and that whole situation?
Yeah, for especially working mothers, central to their stressors and concerns, and that's what Oletu also referred to, were their children, schooling, the health and well-being of their children, but very important, also their ability to provide for their families in future because of pay cuts. And what we found which is more evident for males, is that it was more about career prospects and future personal finances, because of fears around the economy. So for females, their children are central to their stress, while oftentimes for males, it is more about the economic future of the country and their families. So it's a different dynamic.
So there's a poll question that I'd like to just put up on this as well. The role of mom versus dad in lockdown, is it harder for one or the other? So we're going to just put that poll up. So the first one is equal, the kids terrorize us both. The second one is lockdown has been the death of working moms. I read a great article this week about how lockdown has just been the death for working moms, really. And with working dads at home, gender-specific roles have disappeared. Oletu, you spoke about this briefly. What has been your experience of it? And obviously your experience is very similar to mine, but a lot of people don't have that luxury.
I mean, I've got the privilege of, I work in the digital space. So I've just been inundated with work during this pandemic from the onset. It's just been deadlines on deadlines. But I think there is that interesting article. It might be a very similar article by New York Times, I think, about the death of working moms during this pandemic. And it was a very scary article because majority of work women do are we are low-level workers, we're entry-level workers, we're also nurses, it is PAs, it is receptionists, it is at the till when you go to the shopping centers, cleaning, cooking, the caring work, soft skills work. And that is tough because women are having to decide between staying at home and caring for your children or going in and working. And it's usually a toss-up between the two, because if I'm going to go in and I'm going to go work, because of the level of work that I do and the kind of work that I do, I put my family at risk. But if I'm going to go into work as well, who's going to care for the children? So there is a big toss-up working women are having, and a majority of our women in this country, where they're having to choose between work or the children.
So here are the results from that poll. The role of mom versus dad in lockdown, is it harder for one or the other? So it's equal, the kids terrorize us both, is 21%. Lockdown has been the death of working moms. That's the majority of people saying that. It's 45%. With working dads at home, gender-specific roles have disappeared, 34%. So Ruth, what have you seen around people falling into gender stereotypical roles and how this is all balanced out?
I think it really just depends on, the makeup of individual families. And I do think that if parents are around, both parents, and it really depends on who's available. It also just depends on the quality of the relationship. So for some people, because they've been home more, the more traditional roles they don't normally do, they've been able to do. But I do think that it really varies. And I also know that, in my case, both my husband and I are working from home, but we working, so we home, but we isolated from the children, and we just kind of leave them to do their own thing in terms of schooling. And so we still, things are, everybody has to find a way that works for them. And I do think that in many instances, some of the relationships with children and parents have become closer because they're spending more time and doing different things. And then in many instances, in some instances, relationships with one parent or both have become fraught. I know that there's one of my children, I try not to go near their schoolwork because my relationship with that child dissipates very quickly. But that child is much better when their father comes to help them. So it's also about just learning what happens in the dynamics and what is working. And when it's not working, try something different. But it is hard to generalize, I think.
So Ruth, can we talk a little bit, and all of you really, about the guilt? So for me, the guilt is the overwhelming emotion because I'm guilty when I'm working, I'm guilty when I'm with my kids and not working. One of my friends who's a top exec, who I won't out on this webinar because she's probably watching, was saying that she's struggling with the decision of taking leave because she feels like she's underperforming at work, so she can't take leave. And then kids are manipulative, so then you feel guilty if you don't spend time with them. Do you just embrace the guilt? What do you do?
I certainly think that guilt can be such a overwhelming and in a way unhelpful emotion if it just makes you feel helpless. Guilt is only useful if it alerts us to something that we haven't been doing that we really should have. But I think generally we have to look at what is realistic, and then we have to come to terms with our own limitations, our own inadequacies. And if there are things that you can control and you can do, you can attempt to. But I think it is time that we give up this illusion of perfection and this illusion of certainty and this illusion of this is the kind of parent that I have to be, and just do what you can do. Because I think that tormenting ourselves with guilt, we have to find a place to put it that we don't add to what is already so stressful.
Yeah, easier said than done, I think.
So easy to say, so hard to do.
Prof. Wiener, from your research, you identified hope as an important tool to mitigate the negative impact of mental health. What exactly did you find regarding the importance of hope?
I think the most important thing to start off with is to recognize that in human functioning, the presence of the negative, such as experiencing anxiety, does not mean the absence of the positive, such as optimism or hope. This is why most humans survived in the face of adversity. And this is also applicable to our children. We often try to manage the negative aspects and forget to promote the positive as well. In my younger days, when I was still very young and sexy, I worked a lot in oncology, and I was part of the oncology treatment team. And once a person is diagnosed with a disease like cancer or HIV or any of these things, COVID-19, the presence of the negative is immediately there. And you get two types of patients. The first one coming in saying, I've got cancer, my life is over. And then we will look at each other as a management team, a treatment team, and say, we're going to struggle to get this person through this. On the other hand, you get a person coming in crying like a cartoon figure, stating, I've got cancer, but this bloody thing won't get me down. And those are the people that we get through. So what we found with this research of ours, and this is so flippin' exciting, is that as hope levels increase, for the sample of working parents, experiences of anxiety symptoms decrease. Only 4%, Mandy, of our working parent sample experience no hope for the future. While for 77%, Ruth, decent hope levels are still evident. And there was no significant difference between males or females or employees with children or without children, So it just shows you the resilience of South Africans. We have the innate ability to stay positive, even if we feel stressed out. If I can just say, encouraging hope in these times are so important, and we can do it by normalizing fears. Ruth, I'm in your domain now, but feeling fearful now is a normal human experience, and we must recognize it. But we must also recognize that it's a non-permanent situation, you know. As an example, if we think here of the world's history following any catastrophic event, most economies did recover, as it will with this pandemic. A vaccine or a cure was found following previous pandemics. Most people did survive. And the pandemic also offers new business opportunities. Mandy, I read this morning on BBC News website regarding new homeschooling support opportunities that was created because of this pandemic. And they call them pots and zoeters. Nee? And it was so interesting. It was a development.
We need to bottle you up because you have so much hope. So
yeah, but I mean, there's new possibilities, you know, safe learning pots that was developed, online tutoring, and I call these people Zootors or Zoom tutors, you know, it's new opportunities and it will come to us as well. So hope, if we can remain hopeful and we can install hope in our children, we can prevent things like collective trauma in future or communal trauma in future. That's all I want.
Thank you, Prof. Owetu, how are you feeling around the issues of guilt and what Prof just said about hope? How are you managing all of those emotions? And what is your advice for other moms that are going through the same thing?
I think I've always just had a programming in my mind, right? That when I'm at home, I must expect that my attention will be split between the children, the home, and my work. So it was always in my mind that I know that if I'm working from home, my attention will be split. But it was also going in and just managing that expectation and really flipping the script internally now and saying, that is not necessarily the case. I also need to kind of compartmentalize certain things, which our husbands do amazingly. They're able to switch off dad mode and get into, I'm working now. I'm closing the door and I'm locking the door. For me, it was like, why would I close the door when I'm at home and I'm working from home? Surely the noise is acceptable. I mean, so it was just managing that internally. And because I'm also very A-type, I, at the beginning of this, of the lockdown and at the beginning of social distancing, I had a full-on schedule planned out for myself.
Schedules for schedules that we try to stick to.
I had the works of, this is the time when my husband takes over and then I step in, and then this is when I will try and schedule all my meetings, and then I will take over from him and then manage the afternoon with the children, and then I will then go in and go cook, and then I will do this, and then the kids will be thing. So I had the full-on schedule going on. But it goes back to both what Ruth and Prof was saying, that, you know, sometimes we need to allow ourselves the space to be able to just flow and allow ourselves the space to, you know, it's not going to be perfect. It's not, no real thing is perfect. And with the screen time, I was like, maybe I'm raising a pro gamer. Let them go ahead and do the game.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm raising a pro gamer, because I mean, my children are loving the gaming right now and are loving being on their iPads all day, every day. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's just the skill that they need to tap into. Maybe I just need to get them into coding and get them more online courses in this gaming thing. So those are things that I've started investigating since we're here already. So I think with everything, I'm always just trying with my husband. And there are moments where there's the depressive dips and the, what are we going to do to keep the 2-year-old busy whilst the kids are in school? But it's also just the, let's get him a bucket and a spade and a bit of sand and a little makeshift pit, and let's put it in there and let him play around in there. Let him have fun. If he wants to dig in the garden, if he wants to dig up my veggies in my veggie patch, let him do so. Fun. Just to be able to just get on with it and cope. This is just temporary. We will get through this.
I really want to turn to the chat and to your questions out there. So if you've got a question, please post it on the chat, and I will direct them to the right place. There are quite a few that we need to get through. Just before we do that, Ruth, one of the things I mentioned earlier as a throwaway joke was this issue of, you know, wine and herbinol. And that's something that's definitely come up a lot, you know, like sharing photographs of a glass of wine at the end of the day, or jokes about Urbinol. Definitely there's been a reliance on substances for parents in lockdown. Have you noticed a problem, and are we fooling ourselves here?
I mean, I think that for a lot of people, the fact that they can't get wine is the problem, because for a lot of people, or cigarettes, absolutely, because that would be part. I mean, obviously I'm talking in moderation, but I'm talking about that's often parts of people's coping way to wind down. And I think for people who suddenly not had access to that at the most stressful time has been really difficult psychologically. And I do think that, it really just depends what people are using, but we certainly have seen an incredible increase in people's levels of anxiety and depression. So either people who were struggling before and now it's exacerbated, and people who've never had anxiety and depression that they weren't able to manage are now finding symptoms that have come up. And so I think that, for some people, if they're feeling they're not coping, obviously the appropriate way is to do it with a therapist, through a doctor, to look at whether there is something that will assist them. But I think that what's been really hard is that our normal ways of coping we haven't had access to. For a lot of people, going to gym was a release. For a lot of people, seeing family and friends and not being able to do that has increased our stress at times when we really, really need stress relievers. So I do think that, people are turning to things that are comforting. And, again, it's in moderation. Sorry?
Eating is a thing.
Absolutely. And so many people are turning to comfort foods and baking. And, so again, it's about moderation, it's about balance. But we really do have to recognize that it is a difficult time and we're vulnerable. And I think what Prof said, and, it is temporary. The problem is we don't know when things will change. And that's what's so difficult. But I think being hopeful and also just seeing, I think it's important to acknowledge fears and anxieties and what we don't know. But it's also important to look at, and without being a Pollyanna, so not ignoring what's been difficult, but also looking at, things that have come out of this time. And people you are spending, if you like the people in your immediate family, that you have been able to spend more time with. Life has certainly slowed down, and in some respect, that's been great. But it's not about ignoring what's difficult, but it's also about being able to look at what has been useful and helpful, because and holding hope that things will change. We don't know how they'll change, but things will change.
Let's hope. Okay, so some questions here. I'm a principal of a public school. Is there anything you can recommend the school can offer or do to support parents apart from online academic activities for children to complete? Anybody want to have a go at that?
Prof? Or I'm happy to also answer. Okay. I think that what parents are needing to know is that what they're going through, they're not alone. So sometimes, I know it's difficult, it depends on the resources, but just maybe messages from therapists or from, just in terms of normalizing what has been difficult, and maybe also, if you can, facilitate an experience where parents can talk about or ask questions that don't necessarily have to be about learning, but also about what they can do to help them cope through this time. So I think if schools give the message that we're all in this together, that we're on the same team, and that we are looking for ways, I think that parents also need to know that there is compassion and understanding, because for a lot of children, they're not managing not being at school, they're not managing online learning. And as long as that they get the sense from the school that we all in this together, rather than the school is cross because my child is doing badly. So I think it's about compassionate, empathic responses, and just letting the parents know that you are a resource for them as well. I think that would be useful.
There's a message here saying WhatsApp groups about schoolwork works for us, and communication via SMS as well. I want to ask both Prof and Olwetu, what do you think employers should be doing? Because employers clearly need to do more. Prof, if you want to go first, what suggestions would you give?
Yeah, I think very important, if you look at SADC stats, the South African Anxiety and Depression Group, we need to become more proactive, and employers are best positioned to proactively mitigate the mental health impact on a large number of citizens. Firstly, I think business leaders need to show strategic commitment to staff well-being and ensure that staff mental health promotion is part of the COVID business recovery strategy. But more important, it is so important that employers create a safe space for employees to have conversations around mental health and the impact of the pandemic. To achieve this, employers should perhaps think of facilitating sort of COVID-19 touch-based sessions with teams. Following our research, we developed something like that. If there's a touch-based session, it will also destigmatize the COVID mental health impact, because everybody is involved in these conversations, and it can serve as first aid for employees to counteract mental health after effects. Very interesting finding, we found that people who went through these sessions in the work environment, that team cohesion was promoted, and that there was more support for colleagues at a practical and emotional level. And also these sessions showed to significantly benefited female single parents and younger employees in the workplace because of an increase in social support. So creating a safe space. And the last one, yeah, guys, we need inspiring leadership now more than ever at the political level as well as a workplace level. And I think if I can just get that message over to business leaders, you are still in a position to inspire. Do it now. We need more Nelson Mandelas now.
Olwetu, this is something you're very passionate about with Womenomics. What do you think employers should be doing at this time? How can they help us get through this?
Absolutely, I agree with everything Prof said. I think, as a young woman myself, there's one thing that you look forward to and that gives you hope is when somebody in a leadership position actually believes in you and gives you something to look forward to as well. I think a lot of workplaces could do a lot more work in upskilling women right now. And I think creating that access for women to share their goals and aspirations for the future, and then playing a very pivotal role in being able to bridge the gaps that women have versus where they want to go. That will go a long mile. The check-in sessions are extremely, extremely important. Check in with women, check in with single mothers, check in with women with children to see how they're doing. Ask earnestly, how are you doing? And normalize dropping the ball. I think there's no perfection. Normalize dropping the ball and looking forward to the future. We will win. We will get there. And just one more thing is just there was something I wanted to say. Yeah, normalize dropping the ball. And
it's a real thing. Like, it's okay to drop the ball. I mean, we all drop the ball.
Absolutely. And also check in with how we're doing financially as women. I think a lot of women are taking a lot of financial strain right now. A lot of Black women still, in the midst of salary cuts, are having to deal with Black tax. So check in on how those women are doing and how they're coping in times like this, where they're having to downsize, they're having to nip back on certain things. And also we live in a country of huge, we just spoke about substance dependency and substance abuse. A lot of people have had those substances now taken away due to the regulations that we have. I think we need to do a lot more check-ins on that as well, that we're not using alternatives to be able to close those gaps. But I think for me, we need to also, as women and as mothers, check in with our leaders within our organizations and our companies on how do our womenomics look like? What do our company's womenomics look like? Is this a company that is actually for me, that is for my growth and for my mental stability as a woman? What do the policies within my organizations look like? And how do they enable the woman that I want to become and come out of this pandemic, as?
So we're nearing the end of this webinar, so I do want to wrap up a little bit. There's a message here from Tsepiso saying, just being in this webinar is making me feel better, that it is okay for me to be frustrated and I'm not alone. All I need is to try to have my me time so that I don't lose my mind. Absolutely, you know, self-care, finding time alone, wherever that is so important. So just a couple of closing remarks from all of you, some learning, some advice, if you like. Ruth, we'll start with you. What is your advice to people going forward?
It is about being kind to yourself, which means you'll be able to be kind to your children. And I think it's about really recognizing that this is such a difficult time and we actually are in it together. So reach out, get support. So important.
Absolutely. You know, there's a couple of comments here from people saying, thanks, this has helped a lot, feeling a bit of relief, I'm not alone. Like for me, my village is what saves me, you know, being on WhatsApp groups and other moms and sharing with them, you know, it's so important. Thanks so much. I can feel that I'm alone as a single. Yeah, I'm sure that it's tough. Prof, what do you want to say to people?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate again, you know, all of us have suffered some hardships in our lives, and we will also survive this hardship. We've always survived the hardship. So doesn't matter how freaked out and uncertain you feel now, it is really normal. And talk to your children. Don't just teach them or school them or educate them. Talk to your children, not only about the negative aspects of the pandemic, but also the fact that there's hope. You know, their fears are different to ours. I had a conversation with an 8-year-old girl a week ago, and she refused to put on a jacket to school. It was when the schools were still open. And it was extremely cold in Potchefstroom. Potchefstroom is a very cold place to be, né? And she didn't want to put on a jacket. And her mother asked me, Tanina, just speak to this little girl. And I asked her, tell me, why don't you want to put on your jacket? She said, because I need to go to school. They take my temperature. And if I've got the jacket on, my temperature might be higher. And they will put me in quarantine. And then I'll never see my parents again. Can you hear that? So we need to talk to our children about more positive stuff. Have fun, man. Apply humor. Dance with your children. Secrete happy hormones and not only stress hormones. It's flippin' possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much. A way to beat that. Come on, give us some hope here.
I really want to talk to women and mothers out there that it is okay to take some time out. It is okay to get into your car and go for a drive and go get yourself a coffee and just breathe. It is okay to scream into your pillow. It is okay to feel frustrated. I have a journal that I just love writing in and getting the feelings out and just processing what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, because sometimes we vent from a place of not even understanding how we feel in that moment. So just dig deep and just understand where you are. It's hard to be able to react when you don't understand what you're feeling and what you're going through. So do take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, run that bath, get some Epsom salt in, soak in it, and just process some feelings that you're going through in that moment. It is okay to have that glass of wine every now and again. And it is okay to feel frustrated. It is okay to drop the ball. We're human, and we've never had to deal with this before. We've never had to raise children in a pandemic. And it's okay. It is okay.
Thank you, thank you. So just a couple of closing comments here on the chat. And Tubby saying, Prof, you're my hero. We need more of that kind of inspiration and pep talk. Thank you. A great reminder to stay positive and find those happy moments. Wow, awesome panel. Thank you, thank you. What an amazing session. Thank you for the support. It was enlightening. Thanks, Ina. I really appreciated the time at home with the family. So, you know, hopefully at least we've given you a little bit of hope, you know, that there is something to hold on to. You are not alone. We are all in this together. You know, it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to drop the ball. Just don't drop the glass balls. That's what I always say, that if you are trying to juggle all those balls, just don't drop the glass balls. So thank you to all of you for joining us today. Particularly thank you to my panelists, to Ruth Anser, Prof. Ina, thank you. Olwetu, thanks for sharing your personal experiences as well. You know, we are going to share this recording. It is recorded, so you can watch it again if you need some more Zoom therapy. But it's been fabulous. So thank you to all of you. Thanks for your honesty, and thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you.